Council, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Hunt.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I proceed, I just want to announce for anybody who's watching that the Finance and Personnel meeting was not streamed due to technical difficulties, but it was recorded, so it will be available on the city YouTube site within the next 24 hours or so. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd meeting?
Motion to, go ahead.
I'll
Second.
move to approve with one change in item G1A. It should say approve. I believe it says table.
Second.
Okay, any further comments or corrections? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Let's see, are no appearances, there is no public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to council action items under section G1A, unfinished business. Consideration of resolution 25-3-2786, approval of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Monona and the Friends of San Damiano regarding the use, management, maintenance, and future development of San Damiano, put forth by the city administrator. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Neil, do you want to?
Yep, I just quickly, I believe there is a couple of amendments that may get proposed relating to some dates in the agreement as well as some financial reporting requirement. But other than that, the agreement, I believe, stands as was presented previously. But I think Alderwood may have a couple of suggestions he would like to present for the council's consideration.
And I think you should have all received these. You sent them earlier this week. And we've talked to Wes about them, and they're fine.
Yep, just trying to find him here.
Here, do you want to use this? Print out.
Oh, no, that's even better. Thank you. So first, I would move to amend 4 different sections to change the December 1st deadline with November 1st and replace 30 days.
Is it 1st or 15th?
First.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Replace 30 days with 45 days, and that would apply to sections 2A, 3C, 4B, and 6B.
Hang on just a minute. Is Jerry not hearing?
Which looks like we should have
Something's
sound.
going on in there tonight.
Yeah, we should have. Looks like we should have sound working.
He's good.
Okay.
Okay.
He's good? Okay. I'm sorry, Doug.
So, yeah, the motion applies to those 4 sections, 2A, 3C, 4B, and 6B, and just changing the date from December 1st to November 1st, and 30 days to 45 days for the city to respond.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No, the reasoning is just that with a December 1 deadline and a 30-day response time, that meant that half of that probably was going to be in the middle of the Christmas holidays. So it made more sense to move it back.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're back to the original
I had one other motion.
motion, if you'd like to make your other motion.
To add a new section 3F, and I guess I'll just read it. FOSD shall provide a formal year-end financial statement to the city prior to March 1st of each year and present an overview of the financial statement and annual report in person to the city council at their first regularly scheduled meeting in March of each year.
Is there a motion to approve that amendment?
That's my,
Wait a second. Hunter, you presented that as a
That's
motion?
my-
Oh, sorry,
that's
you
the
made
motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any comments, questions? Doug, did you want to say anything further about that, or?
just basically that, given the significant responsibility that the agreement gives in this to the Friends, that there should be financial transparency and accountability, I guess. So that's all.
Any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I guess will the clerk please call the roll? Is that-
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Motion passes. We did it.
That was just,
that was-
Thanks, Wes.
that was just the amendment.
Oh, that was just the amendment, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't need
Sorry.
a roll call for that.
One more.
You'd think I know this after 8 years. Okay, that was the vote on the second amendment. Now, is there a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Well, we already have the motion.
Okay.
We just need to vote.
Oh, my God.
Does anyone else have anything to say?
It's everyone's first day today.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
No, we got it. That's right. That's right. One more time.
And thank you, Wes and Neil and Attorney Cole and whoever else is involved for all the time and effort put in on this. It's been a long haul, but I think it's a good agreement, so. All right, moving on to new business. Item 2A, consideration of Resolution 25-3-2790, approving a facility use agreement with Monona Community Festival, and this is put forth by the Park and Recreation Board. Jake, were you going to come up and talk about this? Sure. And Brian, if you want to come up and take a seat up here too, in case anybody has questions, that'd be great. We have Brian Henry here, who's graciously volunteered to chair or run the festival this year.
Here.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Good evening, Mayor and Alders. The facility use agreement you have in your packets is a accumulation of a lot of hours of work between staff and Mr. Henry, representing the Monona Community Festival. Historically, for years, the festival committee and the city have been working on a handshake agreement detailing terms of who's responsible for what activities. Given that a new nonprofit kind of took over for the old one, this has been a goal of the city's for over 5 years to develop a facilities agreement which detailed all of the responsibilities of both the city and the festival. So similar to what you've seen in the consent agenda and other facility use agreements, this goes into quite a bit of detail, dates, times, locations, responsibilities for both organizations. This was presented to Parks Board at our last meeting and recommended for approval. The fees listed in this agreement were calculated by our police department, fire department, city clerk, public works department, and parks. The parks fees are part of the special event ordinance fee schedule. I do believe Chief McMullen is online tonight if you have any questions regarding the services that fire department offers for the festival. I'm confident in Mr. Henry's ability and the committee to carry out this festival and abide by the terms of the agreement. And as far as anything else in the agreement, I can, or Neil can address to that. There was some modifications or comments from Administrator Steckschulte after our packet went out to Parks Board, so I believe they're mostly clarification items. But the bones of what is presented to you and what the Parks Board is recommending for approval and what Mr. Henry and the Festival Committee have viewed are substantially, the same. There's a lot in this agreement, but it's been discussed and developed and rediscussed at both the staff level and with the festival committee. So at that, I would entertain any questions or turn the mic over to Brian with the festival committee.
I have a question. Your last statement is exactly where my brain was going, like, as long as you've already discussed it and everybody agrees, why should I get in the middle of that? There is, though, a staff report from Neil, and that was included among all the things that have already been discussed, correct? Okay.
If I could, just a
Yeah.
couple things on that, Mayor.
Can I explain?
So a couple things I wanted to point out in some of those items that were comments on the version of the agreement that went to Parks Committee. Essentially had prepared a separate memo identifying and listing those. Again, we have Director Kimmel was a little too efficient and actually started entering some of those amendments into the version that is in your packet. So we kind of wanted to make sure and highlight some of those and explain and make sure that council was aware of what some of those things were. As well as Mr. Henry. The one item, I think that, again, a majority of the items I presented were just simply clarifications, adding a specific contact for the sponsorship person, adding the specific contact for the day of event person, adding the dates when the permits are actually due. So very administrative in nature. The one item, like two items, I guess I did want to point out that were a little bit more substantial. We have been in conversation certainly with Mr. Henry and our Public Works Department about storage at the facility. So we had originally looked at possibly trying to see if there was if it was feasible for a new storage area to be identified by the festival folks, and we had identified that after the festival to be that date. Just in terms of a logistics issue, in terms of if things were moving them out rather than have to move them back in and then back out again to another location. However, it sounds like, and I'm sure Brian can address this, they probably would appreciate some additional time to find a space. So just want to make sure council is aware of that. That language is in there right now. So we would want to make some sort of formal amendment in the agreement document to allow them additional time. And I think that Public Works has stated that they're okay with that. It's just, they can continue to work and make that happen. So, but that language is in there. That was one thing I just wanted to make sure that we did need to clarify. And then we have talked with Brian on that, and as well as with our Public Works staff, who said they are able to probably make that work for a time to be determined. So I think we just discussed at Finance Committee a little bit, probably the ability of just removing that second bullet under 2A about licensee will have use of storage space. I think we could just maybe kind of put a period after the Public Works facility. We can either remove the whole bullet or simply amend that one to simply acknowledge the fact that they're using the storage space at Public Works. So staff can come up with a recommended final language on that for the final agreement. I'm assuming that is what I believe Mr. Henry's going to want, and I think council has already expressed some questions on that as well. The only other item I think I wanted to point out is essentially we did add specific language in here to certainly to Mr. Henry's credit and the festival. They are applying for tourism funds to help offset some of these costs. We're in receipt of that application, or reviewing that right now. So we're just stating that, obviously just putting in language that states they have to abide by the terms of that tourism agreement as well. So just kind of cross-referencing basically the two agreements. They kind of point to each other. So those are really the only substantive changes. I think everything else was simply adding, a little bit more specific information.
And those have been added in this version.
Those two items specifically are in there right now. The tourism additions are in the document.
But I mean,
as
the rest of
presented.
the items in
Yep.
your memo as well, except that the dates need to be added.
Yeah,
dates
and
that
and the
permit
actual
approval.
final persons, and we're planning on just working with Aline to identify those dates when the permits are due, and working with Brian on which names he would want to put in for the contact.
Okay,
individuals.
and that'll be in the next.
And we'll
meeting
try to
on the
include those
7th, it'll be-
for the version in 2 weeks, I think,
Okay,
if that works, so.
That works fine.
okay. Doug?
I was just gonna address what we did at finance, or the discussion there, if I could. Under item 8, the consideration, right now it has a
Oh, that's right.
specific sum that the festival committee would pay the city, $19,587.50. It says licensee shall pay the city that sum. But then in the discussion, it sounded like, we don't know for sure, like the actual hours are estimated for Let's see, for fire department and PD, and I believe Public Works as well. So what if, say, the PD cost end up a lot more? Well, the way it's written right now is they would pay us $19,587.50. 19,587. Regardless of how much PD's costs were. So if that's, so I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other, but we just need to make sure that we're clear what the expectation is. Because if we do end up having a lot of extra cost above 19, then obviously we have a shortfall. I mean, it's also possible our costs could be less,
Yeah.
or probably not too much less. So I guess I was hoping to hear maybe from Brian what he thought about that. But
Just in relation to that, I'm wondering, Doug, if it makes sense to leave it as licensee shall pay the city an estimate of 19, and then if we added under that the city will provide the festival with an invoice or an accounting of what the final figures are post-festival.
right, yeah,
If that's a way to handle it, because then if I mean, obviously the city not gonna hand the festival another $5,000, or bill for another $5,000, but assuming that there's, or that the city will, speak to, or communicate with the festival should estimates not.
right. I'm sure there's language, I mean, I don't know, I think Bill Cole could probably
Right,
provide some
exactly. But
language.
you're wanting some flexibility in there for the right reasons.
Right, either way.
Yeah, either way, I mean,
We can certainly adjust it.
I don't necessarily, I could go either way, either like, hey, this is a sum certain that you're definitely gonna pay us, or this is what we think it's gonna be, but it might actually end up higher, or, well, higher would be a bigger concern for them. So, but yeah, I think Bill could probably come up with some language, some standard language that would allow us to say what we think it's gonna be and maintain flexibility in what the actual is, but,
Because we don't want to charge you more than it costs us either, right?
oh, no, absolutely,
And
well,
we're-
right.
The way it's worded
Yeah.
right now.
Right,
Patrick?
We discussed this during personnel and finance too, and I guess I wanted to throw out there that sometimes having this fixed price is advantageous for them to budget and
Right.
for us to understand what's happening here. And, if it is more expensive, what would that be? I mean, the estimates from PD and fire are basically based on what's been happening for the last several years. So it's a pretty
Yeah.
good estimate. And if there's something major that happens that requires substantially more, that's probably some sort of crisis that, would be out of the control of anybody at the festival, I think, because what we're probably talking about is, some sort of violent catastrophe that we've seen in recent times that is a possibility in any public event. So I think thinking about charging the festival for something like that, or putting it in a position where the festival would be charged for something like that, I think may not necessarily be in my opinion, the right thing to do. So having that fixed price enables them, at least for the first year or two, to help ensure a successful event by having them be able to budget and plan on that expense. So it's just my opinion.
Teresa?
That was exactly my thought. I mean, it's just not fair for the organizers not to know the dollar amount, but I would, of course, let the organizer decide, not me. But if I were having organized events before, you need to know what your budget is,
I
I feel that we're
thought
doing this-
maybe we could say
Yeah,
some up to this amount.
up to this, okay.
But
Oh, yeah.
that doesn't lock them into paying
So
more
that's
than
the- yeah,
they'd
okay.
have to if it ended up being less. But Brian, did you have some thoughts?
Well, first let me introduce myself, Brian Henry. I'm the new board president of the Monona Community Festival, and thank you very much for having me here tonight. And thank you, Jake, for all the work you've done, and Neil for all the work you've done, and Dan, and all the directors, and all of you for working with us collaboratively, and we look forward to seeing you at the festival. And I think that's, I guess, my message very quickly before I address that. That my goal coming into this, taking this position on, was one of the pillars was to be in a collaborative and collective effort with the city, and starting from the get-go. And we do recognize that we are on city property, and so that's my starting point from the get-go. So I appreciate all of you and what you're doing, and thanks for allowing us to continue this cornerstone time-honored tradition for, well, now 50 years or more. I know I've been in attendance since 1985, but so, yeah. Anyway, so thank you. I appreciate that. And I think most of you know me. I'm a longtime Monona resident and teacher and coach and so on. But I'm doing this for the value, and the value is in the community. And I think this brings a lot of community togetherness. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And regarding the budget, it is really helpful for us, being a 501c3 not-for-profit, to have a pretty close to actual cost there, so that when we are working through our budgets and how many sponsors and things like that and so on, it is very helpful to have this number really handy at the forefront of a lot of our discussions. Like, can we have this? What can we offer? What we can't? Just like any business. Mm-hmm. If we have to scale back, we have to scale back. But the idea is to have this be a 3 to 93 event. So offering more to the community is helpful. And so this budgetary number is really helpful when we can see it in front of our face. So, and I appreciate that, what you said.
Do you have thoughts about having an exact number like this, or?
I appreciate the point that you made, Mayor, up to that point, in case it does come in lower for some reason. Mm-hmm. If it goes over, yeah, I mean, we budget for a certain amount, and but I also understand that there are reasons for costs going up, and some of those would be out of our control. And so I guess I can see it both ways. But I really liked when I met with the directors and when everybody came in with that, it was very helpful for us. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Neil?
I would like to say that I think the department heads have done, I mean, they're very, you see these numbers down to, 400,327. I mean, they have done an actual calculation based on, this is not just, it's $10,000. They've actually gone out and they really have gone out and made an assumption on hours and assignment of time based on past history, as well as, certainly I think in terms of kind of just current updated costs and so forth. So I would just say, I think I can speak for staff, and that I think they're fairly confident in these numbers. I don't think that they think that these are exorbitant or really odd. I think these are a very excellent estimate, I believe, on what they think the actual costs of providing service to the festival will be. So I want to make an emphasis. I think we looked a little bit last year. I think the calculation that was originally made was talking about like when people weren't on like a full shift, the estimate for that full shift was on there. Well, they may have only, on part of that shift, they may have only been at the festival 6 out of those 8 hours or 4 out of those 8 hours. So we adjusted that at the end of the festival down to reflect the actual time served at the festival.
Because this is paying overtime, right?
This is for overtime specifically, yeah, exactly. So what this is, so when we've got officers who are already on board and they're already on staff for the day, they don't cover that regular salary because that's would be their on job, regardless of whether the festival was here or not. So,
Patrick?
And this agreement is for 1 year. So if we find that it's, the estimates are way off, it could be adjusted for next year or in subsequent years. So
Probably need to be adjusted anyway with salary increases
Yep.
and things, so. Nancy?
Yeah, so I have a comment and a question. First of all, just as it relates to the storage, I just wanted this body to know that my understanding from talking with Brian as well as with other festival members is the storage facility at Public Works was paid for by the community festival. It was not something that
The
the city.
the structure
The
itself,
structure
yeah.
itself, right? So,
And it can be moved, correct? I think, is that the,
yeah, and I certainly appreciate that, Public Works is busting out at the seams, just like Parks and Rec is busting out of the seams. And appreciate, the hope that the festival will eventually be able to move somewhere else. But I appreciate the city's flexibility, should finding other storage be difficult in '25, given that we're so close to the event. My second question related to that is this Public Works number of 4,327 only reflecting labor and benefits one way, if you will, rather than two ways, since the agreement originally talked about all the equipment going elsewhere after the festival?
I believe it is actually both ways,
It is.
Alder, but I will confirm that.
Okay.
I think they were assuming, because when I think they started putting this all together, they're still assuming how the existing festival has operated in the past several years, the same
Mhm.
situation. So this really, as I said, this has really come up kind of, early on in the conversation, we focused on the kind of the meat and potatoes of giving everything else, and then we're like, ooh, we better bring that in and make sure we at least have a chance to discuss it one more time as part of this.
Mhm.
So I think, my understanding, and I will confirm with Director Stefani and Assistant Director Johnson that that's in fact the case, but I believe it's both directions,
Okay.
both ways.
I just want to make sure before we approve a certain amount that we've got,
Yeah.
we've got the right amount in there.
Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, I think that what you had mentioned, that was what we had discussed before, that was both ways, if I remember correctly, so to address that, but, having more time with the shed and getting more time to find suitable arrangements to get somewhere to move the equipment, if that's the ultimate goal of the city, is to get us moved out of there, then that extra time would be more than welcome. We certainly could use that time, that's for sure. So, and I guess that would also add a considerable cost for us as well, down the road, year after year after year. With storage and then travel and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I personally greatly appreciate the DPW for helping us out this year for sure. And my hope is that we could keep that agreement, but it sounds like the city has other plans down the road, but I guess I would just put that on record. And yeah, so any questions?
Nancy, did you?
I was just going to say that I know that one of the other irritants from the Public Works Department, if you will, was a fairly regular request by non-festival individuals to access the festival equipment for other purposes. And it's safe to say that we will curb that practice.
I was just going to ask about how.
Yeah, we'll curb that practice moving forward because, that clearly was one of the issues. And it's understandable that Public Works doesn't want to be interrupted or pulled away from their work on a fairly regular basis to get in and out for one piece of equipment or another.
I think there's also a question at times as to whether or not that person or those people really had permission to use the festival equipment also, and
Right.
puts
Right.
public works staff in kind of an odd position of, so, yeah.
It does.
I think it would be good to have some kind of policy or
Yeah.
something.
I had a
Rick?
question for Neil. You mentioned that the festival committee is looking at applying for tourism dollars.
Yes, sir.
Does their 501c3 status affect their ability to get tourism funding?
It's not an official criteria, Alder, but I do think it probably does affect their, I think,
Their
certainly,
rating.
we could certainly ask our commissioner who sits on that. I do think it is an advantage, certainly when nonprofits apply for
Okay,
funds.
not a requirement, but.
But it is
does-
not a requirement.
Okay, I was just going to mention that I think it's important for the festival committee to keep up with its filing with the IRS, the 501c3, the 990s, and its credential as a charity, which I think is coming up for renewal sometime this year.
Yeah, it may be, I have to look into that, but we will definitely be doing that,
Okay,
without question.
so like the 2024 990 has to be filed, I think, by May of this year.
Yeah. Oh, I think that is filed.
Okay,
You have a
Um,
treasurer, right?
Yeah, and so, but we just got elected in January 8th and then got all of the information, and so it's been kind of a whirlwind, I will say that for sure. But I can double check on that. But
okay.
I'm pretty confident that that came up in conversation with our team, and yes, we have a treasurer, Tim, he's very good, so
Okay.
he's on top of everything. And Laura Bowles, who was a previous treasurer, is helping transition with everything as it gets moved
Okay.
to us.
It's just that 2024 doesn't show up on the public website yet.
Oh, it's still not there?
Yeah.
Sometimes that takes a long
Yeah,
time.
that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it was applied, but I'll double check, and thanks for pointing that out. I would also, if I could, speak to the shed and the use of like having people come in. If there's any way I can be of assistance in that manner, one thing that was made clear is that there needs to be one individual contact person. I'm that person, and I'm here to anyone, any of you, anybody. You can reach out to me anytime, and I'm very responsive. I'm happy to get back to anybody as quickly as possible, and I'm pretty fast about that. So I just want to throw that out there, that if there's any way I can help PW in that manner, we'll need to access it, and I've talked to Jeff Johnson about that. We'll need to access, because we also want to conduct a thorough inventory of the equipment, making sure it's all in good working condition, as well as knowing exactly what's in there. We've already been out there and removed things that are known not to be used anymore. So those are currently stored at my house, but I mean, they shouldn't have to move that stuff, and we understand that. So, and we're going to go back out there again and do a complete inventory of what's available and what's useful and what's not, and we can't have things in there that aren't used.
Right. And I mean, I wouldn't think staff would have an issue with, the main question would probably be if you actually want to be lending your stuff elsewhere, I guess, and that just depends.
Yeah,
It's your
and
decision, so.
if there's other departments and other events that need to use it or want to use it, again, just like I'm working with the city collectively and collaboratively, I would love to do that. I would be happy to do that, because again, as I mentioned coming into this, I think it's really important from a community sense. And that's how you keep that community going, is to just collaboratively work together. So, if San Damiano needs something, I'd be happy to work with Wes and Jake if you needed something, for the festivals, the other festivals, would be absolutely. Let's work together. And I understand it was all done by handshakes before, and the need for this it's time. I get that too. But anybody can call me up and say, hey, can we use this? And then we work it out so that PW is not burdened with anything, I can do that. I can go over there and be helpful. I'll do that. So any way I can be helpful, I'm here to help, I guess I would say.
Did
So-
you want to say something, Neil?
I just want to see if any alders or anybody else has any other comments. I just wanted to certainly, go ahead, Alder.
Just one thing I would call people's attention to that's a little bit different than it has been, at least in years past, that the carnival hours will go from 11 a.m. and they will end at 8 p.m. And I know, I think that's been kind of the case the last few years, maybe, but
At least last year.
last
Yeah.
year, but before that, they were going to, I think, 11, and I think the experience from PD was that it just created a lot of problems and
Yeah.
not much benefit, so.
I think it also limits somewhat the number of days, because lots of times they'll be starting like 4 days before the festival.
That's
Just
true.
because they're here,
Right.
set up,
Right.
but this is supposed
Yep.
to be just 3 days, right?
Yeah, I could speak to that directly too. I just spoke with Corinna Wenzel last Thursday, and I laid it out. I said, this is the way it is, and this is what we're having, and these are the hours, and this is what we have worked out with the city. We actually aren't going to start on July 2nd at 11 a.m. That's earlier than what we will. It's nice to have that in there, but we're going to start at 4 o'clock, and we're going to go, I think, till 7 is what we agreed on with Wenzel.
Okay.
And then the other days are the 11 to 8. And yeah, been speaking with Chief Cheney, these were items that he wanted to see in place, and we understand that and support it. And I let Wenzel know we're the event organizer, and so we're hiring them, and these are the hours, and that's how we are going to operate. They were fine with that, so,
Good.
yeah.
Nancy?
Sorry, I think that you previously indicated that there might be some discrepancies between the document that we have in front of us and what was at Parks and Rec. Is there
Yeah.
anything?
Yep.
I don't see
That was
the items you guys are talking
That
about.
was, yeah, that was, Alder, that was, I mentioned, because I had provided a memo and comments to Director Anderson, but it didn't get in time to get into the Parks version. So the intent was to provide that exact version plus just the memo for council consideration of those
Okay.
items. Director Kimmel actually started incorporating those changes into the document once she got the memo. So
Okay.
it was, so, yeah,
They
they've been
weren't
pointing out.
anything major, were they?
No, exactly. Most of them were, like I said, like, I highlighted the two things I think that were substantive
Okay.
in terms of the
I
change.
just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything.
Yeah, the other
else, or
items
if
were
there
simply-
was, it got incorporated between now and the vote.
Yeah, that was the tourism item and then the actual dealing with the parks, the public works storage area. Those were the two real key differences on that. The other things were just getting specific on the actual information on dates for the permits, contact information for the people specifically, just in those sort of comments. So I just wanted to take a chance to also reiterate how great it's been working with Brian. He has been very responsive. Gosh, I don't know if I get split times on our calls back to each other or emails, but they're usually pretty fast. We've been doing pretty well on that, so I certainly want to thank him and express, for my personal appreciation for how responsive he's been, and then certainly for Director Anderson for taking up and doing quarterbacking a lot of the discussions, and actually getting us to this point. It's a little bit. Folks who haven't worked on an event of this scale, probably think, oh my gosh, this is just the city being difficult, and this is and that, and what just make it so. These are all, I don't think there's any real fluff in this agreement. These are all really important things, and they kind of help establish the operating parameters, and I think hopefully makes it easier for Brian and the festival going forward too. That we've got this kind of now we have an organized structure on how these things work. But I just want to certainly express my thanks to him, and he's been really a great partner so far in this, and we're very confident that this is going to be a very, very successful festival this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And likewise, going back to you and Jake especially, and all the directors. So I guess I would like to circle back to Jake did send something to me with little note things in there. Yeah, and I didn't, to be honest, that's just my ignorance. I didn't know that scrolling over them, you would see what would come up as the notes. I guess the only thing that stood out in my eyes when I saw that is that the number 2, the scope of use, Public Works Department, Part A, where it says deliver snow fence to festival grounds on Monday, June 3rd. As long as there's something in there, and then there's a section 3, setup and provisions, delivery of any additional equipment. I'm thinking that's where, I don't know what yours says compared to mine. I'm not sure.
It says July 2nd. On the second one, the number 3A, it says on or before July 2nd.
Okay. Is there anything in there about bringing all the festival equipment from the storage garage to the facility grounds?
There's Public Works, let's see here, where's Public Works?
That was in a previous draft, and so that's why I brought it up.
It was supply barricades, provide pneumatic post pounder and air trailer, deliver snow fence, were the 3 things specifically called out.
Yeah, and it
Under
does
Public
say
Works.
deliver snow fence on June 30th.
Yep. And then there's a bunch of other equipment in there that PW has brought in years past, and so. that's what
Okay,
I'm-
we can make sure that gets in.
If that can
there.
get put
Right, yep.
in the way it was written before was all festival equipment from storage garage to festival grounds. And they had written by Monday, June 30th, because we have a setup day where all of our volunteers and our board are gonna be there, and I know the fire department's helping us out. So if there's something that can be
Yep.
added in, that would be helpful.
So if you, all the festival equipment no later than the 30th, or
Yeah,
approximately
the 30th would be best, because that's when we're planning on setup day. If, that's what we talked to the chiefs about. And then I think there was something about how it takes more than a day's worth of time to get all of it over there, but, the 30th or the 1st. I mean,
We'll
we
leave it at the
understand
30th.
if,
We'll leave it at the 30th.
yeah,
As long as I think if it's on or before the 30th, that gives staff flexibility. If there's a couple days before, or that gives Jeff whatever flexibility he needs to get stuff
Sure.
out there.
Yep.
I don't see that being a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone have anything else? Okay, I just want to add that I just want to make clear that, there's been comments about, oh, the city took this over, and the city doesn't want to have it, and blah, 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 which isn't true at all. Our main concern was making sure that we had a responsible organization to manage it. And
Sure.
that's why we put out an RFP, looking for some people to give us some proposals, and I think we're really happy. We're happy
Right
that
away.
the community has stepped up, and, because I know a lot of people wanted the community to step up, but a lot of people didn't want to put in the hours that this requires, which is hundreds
Substantial.
of
Yeah,
hours
exactly.
for some people. So I appreciate your stepping up and everybody on your committee, and it sounds like it's certainly very well organized this year, so.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And that's our goal. And we want to show you that we are here, we're here to stay, and we're committed. We're all from here in Monona, and we're working really hard to make it happen and make it successful and work collaboratively and collectively, and we're going to continue to do that. And we want this to be sustainable. We don't want any guessing, just like you don't. That doesn't make your
Right.
lives any easier either, like, what's going on? We just want to be organized, and we'll debrief afterwards with city
Yep.
directors. I'm happy to do that, and Chief Cheney and I already talked about that, and Jake. And we're going to debrief as a team ourselves, process improvement. And so,
Because there's always things that come up that
Yeah.
you haven't thought of. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
and same with you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's why we work that back and forth. So, thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you. Okay. Well, this will come back in 3 weeks, I guess it
3
is.
weeks, right, technically, yeah.
For our next meeting, so, thank you. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Jake.
All right, moving on to item G2B, and this is started for immediate approval. Consideration of Resolution 25-3-2792, amending the 2025 operating budget for demolition of structures at 4539 Winnequa Road. Neil, do you want to explain why we're taking this out of order, I guess?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, these are essentially, the next two items actually go together, so they are related. One is the budget amendment, the next one will be the approval of a contract for the services being requested. Essentially, this has been a process that has been in process for a considerable amount of time and subject to a significant amount of litigation over time. So the opportunity essentially is at this point to proceed and actually get this resolution, not of the actual resolution of this problem on the site completed. So simply because of the amount of time that is taken up. We did discuss at the finance committee level a little bit, there may be an adjustment made in relation to the execution of the contract, but we can talk about that after the motion is made, if we can, Mayor.
So is there a motion to take this out of order?
Motion to take it out of order?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Neil?
Okay,
Did you wanna-
thank you, Mayor. This is for a budget amendment for essentially to fund the raising of buildings and structures at 4539 Winnequa Road. This has essentially been often known as the Kinsler property, has been what is referenced here. Essentially, this has been subject to, as we mentioned, considerable litigation over the past several years. Most recently, the court has essentially cleared the way and authorized the city to proceed with this raise order. So in order to fund this, essentially this is a cost that will have to come from the city up front. It will be usually, so I think the process is to then essentially send an invoice to the owner. If the owner does not pay it, then it is essentially it's signed as a special through whatever course of action they would do in terms of ownership on the property, and then eventually those funds would be returned to the city. But it could be several years before those funds are recovered. So I just want to make sure that council is aware of that. It will eventually be recovered, but it could be a little bit of time before that is done. So it is known, we did do a competitive RFP process to establish the budget that is in the number that is here. I think in the memo that I provided, I wanted to point out that we did not select the lowest bidder on the list because of a qualification error essentially in their scope of work. Related specifically to the garage foundation, we asked for complete removal. The proposal that was provided had narrative that described it as removing it down 2 feet instead of taking out the entire one, which we felt, in terms of reviewing it, would most likely result in a change order that would actually end up costing more than the difference between the first and second level proposal. So not in terms of not only following the exact request of the RFP, we feel it eventually would actually make it a more expensive process and not make them the lowest bidder. So I wanted to make sure that council was aware of that. Obviously, our preferred practice is obviously usually to take the lowest bidder. The difference is about $800 between the two. So not a significant amount, but the four bids we did have in terms of all four was, I think the lowest was $70,000, but it was not qualified. $71,000 was the second lowest. We felt that was the lowest qualified bid in this case. And then the next two were $89,000, I believe, and $101,000, I believe, were the next two bids. So we certainly are still going with the more competitive proposals for this particular contract work. So that budget amount that is in the resolution is based on selection of that second number, that $71,000 number. So, any questions?
No, at finance, we added some language to this one, but I'll explain when we get to the next item. I don't think we don't need to do it
That's probably true.
here because it's just a budget amendment. It doesn't really commit us to anything.
Anything else?
I guess
Teresa?
I'm just curious to understand sort of the overall process. So, the owner of the property, as it states in the packet, was given the opportunity to do something about it after multiple failures.
We discuss that in the next item.
Yeah. Oh.
Or in this item, maybe. This is the budget amendment.
I think they
It
are
makes
both.
no difference to me.
They're both regarding raising of buildings, Mayor. I think I would be okay either one, but
Yeah.
I'd say
Why
chair's
don't we wait
choice
and
for
discuss
the
it at the
second one.
next
Okay.
one?
Okay.
That one's gonna have more discussion anyway.
Sounds good.
Okay, if there isn't anything else, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein?
Aye.
Alder DePula?
Aye.
Alder Holmquist?
Aye.
Alder Moore?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Alder Radmacher?
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Moving on to item C, consideration of Resolution 25-3-2793, approving a contract for demolition of structures at 4539 Winnequa Road, also put forth by the city administrator, also starred for immediate approval. Is, Neil, do you want,
Yep, this would be the same.
did you want to talk about why this is starred for immediate approval? or
I'd say just similar,
Same
same as
thing
as the budget amendment in terms of just because the process has taken as long as it has to this point, staff is requesting that to be able to move forward as quickly as possible to get this finally executed. There will be, again, some discussion, I guess, on that. It will be to discuss the timing of the actual execution of this contract as part of the discussion.
Okay, so Nancy, you had the motion?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the contract?
I'll move.
Second.
Neil? And you could give a little bit of the background here.
Yep, I said, certainly the same justification as was primarily discussed with the budget amendment. Certainly, again, we had essentially had two key qualifiers that essentially that required for the RFP, just as a background. We had 6 proposers walk through the required walkthrough of the structure, so that was a required meeting for folks to come into. Four firms ended up submitting a proposal, as I reported previously. Unfortunately, the low bidder did not attend the required walkthrough meeting in addition to having the essentially the discrepancy with the garage foundation specifically. So again, that's why the second lowest number is recommended at this point by staff.
And did you want to give a little background on this?
And I guess in addition,
Situation.
certainly Alder Wood, I'll certainly just introduce it, but if you want to talk about it.
Well, but I mean, just about the history of this situation, is that what you were asking before, Teresa?
Yeah, and just the process in general of how a municipality can suddenly find themselves in this really unfortunate
Yeah, certainly I'll be
situation.
very 10,000 foot, and some Alders
Right.
here probably have more
Right.
history on this than I do. But this has been going on, I believe, 7 or 8 years, I
Yeah.
believe, is somewhere in the time frame. I believe.
In
Collective
some form
Common.
or another, yeah.
So there is a structure that is essentially in very, very poor condition. At some point, it became to the point of a nuisance, neighbors complaining and so forth over time, where it got to an enforcement action essentially by the city. Those enforcement actions weren't really effective, so it ended up being essentially nothing being done about it. To actually got to a point where there was considered enough of a public safety issue where a raise order was actually issued by the city to remove the structures. The reason this was an issue in terms of becoming in litigation over and over again, basically by raising the entire property to the extent that we're essentially proposing at this point, causes the property to lose its grandfathered status in terms of where the location of the foundation is. It's closer to the lake than would normally be allowed. So let's see, Alder Holmquist nodding, so that means I got it right, good. So obviously, that was an extremely valuable prospect that I would think that ideally the property owner would have taken remedial action and got things fixed to not lose that status, but since that didn't happen, it suddenly became a court issue that they tried to issue that and cause that to be stopped. That has been, I believe, 4 or 5 different appeals, and
We have spent many thousands of dollars on this.
that actually did go all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court declined to hear the specific case in this matter, so the appellate court case was approved. So at this point, the only way legally to stop the process from that standpoint would be to get an injunction from the court to do that. We don't see that as probably being something very likely. The court, to this point, has been very clear. The other factor that is being reviewed right now, as Alder Wood mentioned in finance, is that there has been kind of essentially an appeal filed to the Zoning Board of Appeals to take a look at this coming Thursday to see if there's something that they can still be done. City essentially presents its case ZBA essentially is a, I think it's a quasi judicial body, so it has its own legal entity, that of course the city has to pay for. And then the applicant will have their legal representation at this meeting on Thursday. We feel pretty confident that there's not really a clear path forward through that process. However, they have a right to certainly be heard at the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that meeting is happening on Thursday. So Alderwood is going to, I think, was discussing, at least at Finance, making whatever action, if approved tonight, making execution of the contract contingent upon whatever action happens at ZBA on Thursday. I don't know if Alder, you have anything else to add to that specifically?
Sure. So, just to kind of summarize real briefly, the city had issued the raise order. That was appealed by the landowner to Circuit Court. Circuit Court ruled in favor of the city. The property owner appealed to the Court of Appeals, which ruled in favor of the city. They then asked the Supreme Court to look at it. The Supreme Court said no. So that was the end of the case, but they then was it a week ago, I think? Or maybe a little longer. Anyway, they very recently had filed a motion with the Circuit Court, which has jurisdiction over it still, for a temporary restraining order preventing the city from going forward with raising it, which the Circuit Court denied. So, that's what it says on CCAP. However, they'd already filed, like as Neil referenced, an appeal of the city building. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually see this. They appealed the city building inspector decisions dated January 3 and 13, 2025, denying building permit requests to quote, repair, replace, remediate, etc. property. So my only point was, and I don't know that I would concede that they necessarily have a right to be heard at ZBA, but that'll be kind of up to them to decide. But there's the possibility, they go through the process and ZBA says, yep, we're overrule the building inspector, and then we've already approved the contract. So that's my thought, was just to make the execution pending the outcome of the Zoning Board of Appeals decision.
And you're going to offer an amendment to that, is that right? Nancy?
Given the legal resources extended by the city in the pursuit of this case, does the outcome, the eventual outcome, aside from the possession of the property, is there any other legal remedy in terms of the city being compensated for that?
I mean, I think outside of certainly the work being done, I mean, there'd probably be some avenue in terms of trying to attempt to recover some staff time and other things in terms of doing that. I think it's a little bit more difficult to do that. Obviously, they're doing something like the contract is a very clear cut service that's invoiced. From an accounting standpoint, it's much clearer to be able to do that. Yeah, certainly something we can look into, Alder. I don't think that, at least at this point, your legal counsel has not suggested that there is many other opportunities at this point. But we can certainly ask and see if there is other opportunities to do so.
I mean, am I right in assuming that Attorney Cole has had to, or his firm have had to spend?
Oh, absolutely.
Many hours, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
We're not going to recover those.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
Costs,
yeah.
So that was my question. Is there any way to recover any of that? Because it seems to
Not the
me-
legal fees. What they call the American rule is you pay your own fees, with some exceptions for civil rights lawsuits where you can there's some statutory exceptions, but in general, you don't get attorney's fees, so
Okay.
it's,
Which have been substantial.
It's been kind of a
Yeah.
lose-lose
no doubt.
proposition.
It's involved several different people at Bill's firm over the years, and it's
Yeah.
And if I heard you correctly, Neil, the property owner was first asked to remedy the situation about 7 years ago, did you say?
I believe it was 7 or 8 years ago that this situation actually began.
I think it first started with a second old garage that was on the property. At one point, we spent a lot of time trying to get him to take that down, I think,
Mhm.
and then it morphed into the house.
I think the specific case denial that got appealed, well, I think that was 2022.
The latest iteration, that sounds about right, Alder, yeah. I mean, this for the entire, this is the main structure is really the one, well, really, the orders for all structures on the
Right.
property at this point.
The pictures, I don't know if you scrolled down
I
and saw
did.
the pictures. I mean,
It-
their neighbors saw animals going in and out of
Right.
it. And,
Mm.
so
And-
we've heard a lot from the neighbors,
Yeah.
so.
And Neil, if I also heard you correctly, I believe you said that there was at one point the option to repair in place the house.
I think if.
But now if a new house were to be built on that property, it would not be able to be built on the same location because of,
Correct.
it is no longer grandfathered into that. Okay.
That's why the demolition is certainly a very serious impact to
Yeah.
the property
Yeah.
owner. Absolutely, that's
Absolutely.
certainly
Yeah.
acknowledged. But it
Mhm.
is certainly I think there have been multiple opportunities for the owner
Mhm.
to step up and take action that would have
Yeah.
still allowed that to happen. But
For sure.
Anyone else? Okay, well, Doug, did you want to make your?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll move to amend, to add to the end of the now therefore be it resolved clause. So it reads, city administrator is authorized to execute the contract for services pending the outcome of the zoning board of appeals hearing on March 20th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Not on the amendment, just a general question.
Okay, then all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're back to the original motion. Teresa?
Yeah, just a general question. Thank you for including the photographs of the exterior and interior and the property. It's really helpful for me to understand like exactly the condition of the property. So I think I know the answer to the question I'm about to ask, but I want to ask it anyway. Throughout the document, I see the contract is for demolition. That is the word. On 2 of the committees that I chair, there's just sort of been this, not really a planned coordinated conversation, but both committees just happen to be talking at the same time about the concept of deconstruction as opposed to demolition, where materials are very intentionally recovered and perhaps sold, perhaps, whatever happens next, they just don't go to a landfill. So like brick is one of the things, wood, that can be recovered. Again, as I started to say, I've seen the photographs. So I don't know what kind of an option that would be. I'm just curious to know if there would be any interest in, from this body in looking to see if there would be an organization that would be interested in.
Wouldn't that have to be
Looking at
included
it.
in the contract? An RFP, maybe?
Oh, maybe.
It
might be too late
they
for
are.
it.
Maybe they are.
Yeah.
They do that. I don't know.
yeah, our general conditions just simply state that essentially all content, structures, building materials, yard debris, and junk shall become the property of the contractor and removed from the site.
Yeah.
So my guess is if the contract, this is, the contractor's been selected is is a demolition
Demo, right.
contractor, it's what they do.
So that, yeah.
So my guess is if there's something that is salvageable and can be reused, I think they would probably take advantage of that. And also just note in the RFP that in terms of like the actual, the house demolition itself is that, so the basement shall be thoroughly busted and left in place. So they are breaking it up and simply leaving it on site so that it does not have to be removed and taken off. So there is some of that is being done, Alder, but it's just not explicitly to the point that I think you are describing, so.
Mayor.
Yep.
Yeah, I would just say, as Alder Rademacher, as you know, I'm very appreciative of that approach. I'm sure we all are, but in this case, and as you also know, the city has required recycling of materials of virtually every development that we've done, like
Right.
95% of the materials that came out of the riverfront were recycled.
Yeah.
But in this case, you know, I shudder to think, given the,
Yeah.
in terms of the expense that we want to incur, given that we're already extending expense in court, and B, you know, the general condition of the house, it's hard for me to imagine that the materials there would be of any value. I know I certainly wouldn't want to, just as an example, wouldn't want to, you know, pick up 2x4s, you know, that have been, or whatever might be in there, or bricks, you know, I mean, it's, I think it's.
Anybody else?
Just to close on that, I mean, I think, as Neil pointed out, that provision does, you know, give incentive to the contractor if there's something
Right.
worth recycling or
Take
worth
it, yeah.
salvaging, rather.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they would do that. So I'm sure that that's,
Right.
you know, part of their business.
Yeah.
And that may be the part of the reasoning for the cost difference between the low-end proposals and the high-end proposals, to be
knows?
quite honest. They
Yeah.
may see some additional revenue opportunity. I mean, certainly that's not expressly stated in their proposal, but that's certainly a possibility that they have a way of offsetting some costs with some revenue from whatever they take off the site.
Anyone else? All right, well then we will vote on the contract as amended, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DePulo.
Aye.
Alder Holquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Moving on, that was the regular business part of our agenda. Moving on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. Any news from your committees, sustainability or DEI efforts? We'll start with Alder Holmquist.
We have a ZBA meeting on Thursday.
Yes, you do.
That's probably the highlight. For people to be aware, that meeting will be, because the applicant is being represented, the city will also have representation there.
And the ZBA.
Yeah.
And the Board of Appeals will have their own legal
Right.
counsel, yes.
And is that still meeting in the conference room?
We are scheduled to meet in the conference room.
Okay, all right.
We've had a packed house before, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not the first time.
Alder DePulo.
No report.
Alder Bernstein.
No report.
Alder Rademacher.
No report. I had a lot to say last time, so nothing this time. But I will just mention that I was happy to see.
I missed it.
Not only report, but.
I'm gonna talk. So there. I was just happy to see the Monona Farmers Market on the agenda tonight, and I just wanted to say that I know that that organization has had a change in leadership, I believe. The executive director needed to step down, so I was a little concerned, like what would happen? You know, what would become of the Mona's Farmers Market? So it's just really nice to see them moving forward. I do know that they are probably really welcoming of volunteers to help sort of at a planning level. It takes a lot of work to pull that off. So if anyone's listening and you're interested and you love the market, they could use your help.
Alder Wood.
Well, Parks Board met, but we've pretty much discussed everything that we talked about, so. I would agree, the farmer's market, that they have had some changes. I know they lost their longtime treasurer,
Yeah.
but they definitely could use more volunteers, either day of or in particular in advance of it, but, yeah, that's all.
And Alder Moore.
Actually, I would just like to give a shout out to Doug Plowman, who just got a vacation. A much needed vacation. And I'm glad that he was able to get a vacation. And beyond that, I have nothing to report.
Oh, and Alder, just a side note on that,
Yeah.
he drove from Champaign, Illinois this morning and showed up at
Amazing.
work at 10 a.m. this morning. Even though we told him to stay home and take the day off, he didn't have anything on the agenda. It's a big packet week for him, so he
Yeah.
was in today and was 10 to 5. He was here today. After driving from 4 in the morning, he came in, so.
I thought you were going to tell me he drove all the way back from the East Coast.
It was bad enough from where he was. It was still, I think, a 6-hour haul, so, yeah.
Yay. City Clerk?
In-person voting starts tomorrow and goes through the 28th. Hours are weekdays, 8 to 5, and then additional hours Saturday, the 22nd, from 8 to noon. The last day to request absentee ballots is next week, Thursday, March 27th.
And are you also open till 8 on the Wednesdays?
No, just a.
Oh, you're not? I've been saying that, okay. Because you are at some elections, right?
The general election, I'm open till 7.
Okay, all right, okay. Neil?
No words of report, Mayor.
Okay, and I don't have anything to say other than happy St. Patrick's Day. Uh, No appointments. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Oh.